Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spurs Up Show, the best Gamecocks podcast on the internet. Today is Monday, August the 9th, 2021. Today's show, we continue along with the 2021 position unit previews, guys. Today, we are breaking down the Gamecocks wide receivers heading in the 2021 football season, guys. First things first, I'll look back at the wide receiver position in 2020. Also, we'll meet the wide receiver group for this year's team, talk about most to prove, best overall, season will be successful if, and I'll give my overall grade for the Gamecocks pass catchers heading into Shane Beamer's first season. Also, guys, we've got early fall camp impressions as the Gamecocks now are 3 practices in to Shane Beamer's first fall camp as the team gets ready for opening kickoff on September the 4th against Eastern Illinois. Guys, I'll talk about fall camp, all the things I'm hearing as South kind of gears up for a very big week as the pads come on. We've got a scrimmage this upcoming weekend. A lot to get into on the fall camp side of things. Also, guys, we've got news and notes, your listener questions, and a fantastic conversation. Great interview. Travis Haney was on the South kind of beat from 2007 to 2011. Really, really great stuff as he recalls his memories of South kind of winning the 2010 SEC East title, back-to-back national championships in baseball. Also, some books he's written, the great work he's done on the Gamecocks beat. Guys, I got a lot to get into here on a Monday, and it's all brought to you by our friends over at Upstate Movers Group. Guys, Upstate Movers Group, superior moving service. They bring care and attention other companies can't offer because they're just too busy maintaining trucks and profiting off of them instead of focusing on service. Guys, service is what separates Upstate Movers Group from the competition. They're not a trucking company. They're a moving services company, and they're also employee-owned co-op. Their movers are paid twice the industry average, and everyone on the crew is invested in your success. They have dedicated professional crew members, and they also offer black glove service. They offer end-to-end packing services, custom crating and packaging for special items, and cleaning services as well. They're founded by Greenville natives and University of South Carolina alumni, guys, so a Gamecock-owned small business. They also offer 20 years of project management moving experience, and they can offer logistics and solutions that traditional moving companies simply do not have the skills for. Guys, whether in the upstate or across the state of South Carolina, if you have any moving needs in 2021, be sure to check out our friends over at Upstate Movers Group. You can find them on social media at Upstate Movers Group. Of course, if you have any other questions, go to their website, upstatemoversgroup.com. That's upstatemoversgroup.com. Be sure to check them out and tell them Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent you. Let's get it. Smell that, folks. Can you feel that? Football is in the air in the capital city. Ladies and gents, happy Monday. Hope you're doing well. I'm Chris Phillips with the Spurs Up Show. As always, appreciate you guys tuning in, guys. We have got a packed show here on a Monday, and I thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope this finds you well, whether you're on the commute, you're in the office, you're on the job, you've got the day off, whatever it might be, folks. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in, as again, we are talking football here on a Monday, 26 days away until toe meets leather and the Gamecocks open their 2021 season, the season opener, September the 4th, against the Eastern Illinois Panthers. Guys, before we dive into everything, a couple of housekeeping items that I want to touch on. First things first, we're back in studio. It was great to go on the road last week, see my brother. It was worth every second of the drive, but I'll tell you folks this, I will never, ever again be driving to the state of Missouri. 12 plus hours, didn't get home Thursday night, or better yet Friday morning till 3:30 in the morning. A brutal brutal drive, but again, was worth every second. Appreciate you guys being cool and flexible last week, and it was really awesome to get to see my brother and embrace with him and celebrate his accomplishments. But again, it feels very good. We're back in studio. We're back to a normal schedule, and content is absolutely rolling. Content bleeding out the eyeballs. We've got the Daily Crow Monday through Friday this week. Normal schedule, noon to 1. Podcast, of course, Monday, Thursday. Guys, a quick Daily Crow update in case you may have missed it on social media. I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, making it official. August the 23rd. Monday, August the 23rd will be our launch date of the expanded Daily Crow. So on that date, we will go from 12 to 1 to 12 to 2, Monday through Friday. Yes, folks, the best Gamecocks daily digital show just got even better for each and every single one of you. It's going to be a really cool thing. We're kind of revamping some graphics. And like I said, we're expanding the show. Going to have guests on as well. Really, really excited as we kick that off going into the 2021 season. I know it's going to be a great thing with you guys calling in, leaving your questions. There's going to be a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts as we get into kickoff and stuff like that. But again, guys, Monday, August the 23rd, that's when we'll be expanding the Daily Crow from noon to 1 to noon to 2. Now 2 hours instead of just 1 hour per day. Very excited for that, guys. Also, as we wrap up playing the 2021 season Dynasty on Heisman mode, the season simulation series officially set to begin tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Guys, by the time you're hearing the sound of my voice, you've probably already seen the schedule graphic with a full breakdown. So I know when we played the Dynasty on Heisman, it was very random and all over the place. And that's because I was going back and forth from home and doing different things. And, you know, just the madness, the chaos of the summer, if you will. The season simulation series is very scheduled out. I want to make sure you guys know exactly when we're playing, what times we're playing, who we're playing, all that good stuff. And if you're not familiar with what the season simulation series is, guys, it's as simple as this. Instead of me playing the games, I will literally set up the games, let the computer duke it out, and we will literally watch and follow along as the Gamecocks 2021 season unfolds. What does NCAA football think South Carolina is going to do in Shane Beamer's first year? It is a really good time, a lot of fun. Yours truly probably gets a little too worked up over it, but it is a really good time, and I really enjoy it. I know it's something really, really fun. It'll be fun to sit back and kind of interact with you guys even more so because, hey, I don't have to worry about pushing the buttons or playing. It's just like, hey, let's see what the computer can do, and we'll go from there. But the season simulation series beginning tomorrow night, 7 o'clock kickoff. We'll play tomorrow night, Thursday night, and then Sunday. Basically, every single kickoff time is at 7 o'clock, by the way. So I'm not doing the crazy late 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, but it won't be so early in the day where people cannot tune in. So 7 o'clock, again, you guys will see the full schedule graphic and the updates for that. But kicking it off tomorrow night, really excited for that, guys. Also, a couple of quick updates, a couple of quick reminders, I should say. We are back at Tin Roof this week. This week, all the way through the end of football season. I will not be missing another one. We're back at Tin Roof this Wednesday, all through the season, but 5 to 7 this week. Come on out, Tin Roof in the Vista in downtown Columbia, guys. If you cannot be there, we are streaming also, of course, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Got a couple of special guests as well, the old media boys stopping by the live at Tin Roof. Mike Yuva of Watch Fox and Mike Gillespie of ABC Columbia, both very good friends of mine, both guys who do a fantastic job here in the city of Columbia, and really, really excited to get them on the show again. Guys, that's 5 to 7 at Tin Roof in the Vista this week. Be sure to come on out. $3 drafts, $10 wings, and talking Gamecocks. A Wednesday night you simply cannot beat, guys. And also one last reminder, TSUS, Cox by 90 live show next Friday, August the 20th, 5 to 7 at Rita's on Folly Beach. Again, I just talked about Tin Roof, but at Rita's on Folly Beach, guys, the beach, talking Gamecocks, what could really be better? So cannot wait for that. Appreciate the fine folks at Rita's for having us out. Appreciate my good buddy Jeff O'Hare at Cox by 90 for setting this thing up and getting it rolling. But we'll be live on location, Rita's Folly Beach, 5 to 7, Friday, August the 20th. And again, I'll be pumping out the graphics and reminding you guys via that way, but just wanted to throw that out there on the show. TSUS Cox by 90 live show at Rita's next Friday, August the 20th on Folly Beach. What could be better? All right, let's go ahead and dive into it, folks. Like I said, we're continuing along with a 2021 position unit preview series. And on today's show, we are talking the Gamecocks wide receivers heading into 2021 football season. Before we look at this year, before we start looking ahead to this year and this season, let's look back at 2020 and just sort of how we got here, if you will. And of course, in 2020, it was the Shai Smith show on the outside, right? You know, the question going into 2020 was, okay, you have no more Brian Edwards. Of course, there's no Deebo Samuel. Is Shai Smith ready to be the number one? Is he ready to be the main guy? Was he ever? 57 catches, 633 yards, 4 touchdowns for Shai Smith. And guys, what's crazy about it? Teams knew who we were throwing it to, right? I remember the first game against Tennessee. What do you have, like 10 catches, 11 catches? And I remember going into week 2 against Florida. I was like, there's no way he's going to have that many. Florida's going to key on him. They're not just going to let us force feed Shai Smith. They're going to make us go to someone else. Sure enough, they didn't. I think he had like 12 catches in that game and had another great game and had a great season as well. Now, with that being said, outside of Shai Smith, the next 7 guys I'm about to read off, Shai Smith had 57 catches, right? 57 catches for 633 yards and 4 touchdowns. The next 7 guys I'm about to read off, just to give you some perspective, had a grand total of 40 catches for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. So safe to say last season, a number 2 option never established itself and never stepped up. You had Jalen Brooks, 11 catches for 100 yards. Josh Vann, 10 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. Xavier Legette, 7 catches for 113 yards. Dak Joyner, 7 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. Trey Adkins, 2 catches for 20 yards. Rico Powers, 2 catches for 19 yards. And Jerkari Caldwell, 1 catch for 5 yards. And again, I know there were multiple reasons the passing game struggle. You know, Colin Hill's struggles at the quarterback position and just the inconsistency of that position. The offensive line and pass protection was not very good. But for whatever reason, drops, whether it be underdevelopment, whether it be inconsistency, this unit struggled, and they struggled mightily a season ago, and that's why they're one of the biggest, if not the biggest question mark on this Gamecocks football team entering Shane Beamer's first season. With that being said, let's meet the wide receivers. Let's meet the pass catchers heading in this 2021 football season. We'll start with senior Jalen Brooks, redshirt junior Amaryon Brown, senior Josh Vann, junior Amaryon Brown, redshirt senior Randricus Davis, redshirt senior E.J. Jenkins. I am listing Jenkins as a receiver because he's listed as a receiver on the Gamecocks official roster. Now, I'll probably talk about Jenkins with the tight ends as well, but I'm going to put him with the receivers just to do it again. Redshirt senior E.J. Jenkins, redshirt junior Trey Adkins, junior Xavier Legette, redshirt senior Shai Smith, redshirt freshman Ben Rollins, freshman Eric Rice, freshman Omega Blake, freshman Sam Reynolds, redshirt senior James Bartholomew, freshman Aaron Morton. Let's see, sophomore Rico Powers. There's a lot of receivers. Redshirt freshman Peyton Mangrum, redshirt senior Chad Terrell, sophomore Jerkari Caldwell, and that is it for the 2021 pass catcher. So a long list, like I told you guys after the spring game, long list of guys. The question will be, can you find some dudes? Can you find some players that can be consistent for you on the outside? Who's going to step up as the number one? When is the last time, guys? And I started to think about this, and I'm like, I guess maybe 2016, but I don't even think in 2016 it was this big of a question mark. I was trying to think, when's the last time South Carolina football came into a season and you just genuinely had no clue who the number one receiver was? I mean, no idea, no clue. We have no idea coming into this season. So it makes like I said, it makes this receiver position maybe the biggest question mark on this Gamecocks football team. Let's move the guys into most approved, best overall. Season will be successful if, and I'll give my overall grade for the unit. And we start with most approved, guys. And I'll be honest with you, it was very hard to pinpoint guys for this because let's face it, this entire room has something to prove. I mean, each of these individual players has something to prove in their own right. But what made me choose this particular player for my most approved Gamecock in the wide receiver room, what made me choose this particular player is a couple of different factors. Number one, hype on the recruiting trail. Number two, lack of production since he's been on campus. Flat out, just call it for what it is. Hasn't been the player we thought he should have been, at least at this point. And the other reason is this, because I think right now he is a projected starter. I think he's one of your top 3 receivers right now, at least according to what Shane Beamer is telling us in media day and post-practice comments, which we'll get into more in just a second. But again, you could pick almost any receiver in this wide receiver room, and you can make that argument, and you'd have a valid point for each and every single one of them. But for me, my most approved, and a guy that, dude, it's just put up or shut up time. It really is. He's a senior. He's a guy that was a 4-star. I remember the day that we got this dude committed, and I was so fired up, and I was like, man, this dude is going to be like the next Debo. He's got big play ability. He's out here on his film making one-handed catches. Like, oh, my goodness, I can't wait to see what he does in Columbia. For whatever reason, guys, whatever you want to call it, just hasn't panned out, and that is senior Josh Vann out of Tucker, Georgia. Now, is Josh Vann going to be South Carolina's number 1 option? Is he going to be an all-SEC receiver? I don't think so. I have no idea, though. We don't know hardly anything about this wide receiver room. But at some point, right, at some point, and I looked back at my previous year's shows talking receivers, and Josh Vann and even Shai Smith, those are 2 guys' names who just continue to year after year after year. I'm talking about in this light of, man, they have a lot of potential. They have a lot to prove. They have a lot to prove. Will this be the year they step up? Brand new receivers coach, brand new start, brand new offense. Josh Vann right now is being talked about as one of the top 2 or 3 guys, most likely a starter for this Gamecocks football team at wide receiver. If not now, it'll never be, because he is a senior. This is his last year of football, I believe. This is his last year he'll be doing it. I don't think Josh Vann is probably an NFL guy, right? At some point, dude, you got to be the guy you were recruited to be. You either are or you're a complete bust. And I know some people, oh, that's kind of harsh. No, dude, no. The guy's underperformed. I mean, a 4-star prospect. What happened? Whether it's been underdevelopment or he just can't catch the football, I don't know. The guy obviously, though, has a skill set. He wouldn't be at this level if he didn't. And again, plug and play whichever player you want in this most approved category, because they all should be here. Honestly, every single one. I should have just said most approved. Everybody, because none of them have proven anything. None of them have proven it. When your leading returning receiver had 11 catches for 100 yards a season ago, guys, everybody has something to prove. Everyone. So for me, I picked one guy. I'm going Josh Vann. I think Vann is a guy that does have potential. I still want to believe and hold out hope he can be a good player for South Carolina. You know, again, you watch his film in high school. I mean, this dude has athletic ability. There's no question. He's also battled some injuries here and there, but Josh Vann's the guy that I look at when I look at this receiver room and you look at, okay, could this be a dude? Could this be a dude? Could this be a dude? Vann is the guy that I'm like, I feel like he's the closest to realistically being a consistent week in, week out contributor. But again, with that being said, everybody has something to prove. So for Josh Vann this year, it's like, hey, was it really just the coaching staff? Was it really just you weren't put in the best possible position to be successful? Was it really just you weren't developed properly? Or call it for what it is, be blunt, or are you just not the guy we thought you were when we recruited you? Were you really just not that good of a football player? Because I don't want to believe that, but 4-star prospect has done literally nothing since he stepped foot on campus. It's put up or shut up time for a guy like Josh Vann. So again, Josh Vann, my most to prove in this Gamecocks receiver unit. Let's move into best overall. And again, this one was really hard to pick. And literally the guy that I'm picking is best overall for the South Carolina receivers. He's never played a down at South Carolina, and that is scary. Also, what's scary is I am putting all these preseason expectations on this guy, and I don't think Shane Beamer has mentioned him once, which is very, very nerve-wracking for me, okay? But my best overall right now, going off of what we know, going off of what we've seen on film, going off of everything we can take into account, guys, my best overall right now, again, has never even played a down at South Carolina. It's the Georgia Tech transfer, Amaryon Brown. I mean, you look at what he did as a true freshman. He has the greatest body of work of any receiver on this roster, and it's not even close. Amaryon Brown, his freshman season, I think he caught like 7 touchdowns. He tied the freshman single-season record with a guy, oh, by the way, named Calvin Johnson, who he was just inducted in the NFL Hall of Fame of the weekend. So Amaryon Brown, if nothing else, has at least done it on the Power 5 level. He's at least done it in a big-time conference against like teams like Pittsburgh and Syracuse and Clemson. And I know we love to hate on the ACC and all that, but he's at least done it on this level, which is saying a lot more than anyone else in this room can say. There's just no other way to put it. So right now, going off of what I know, like I said, guys, I know I'm putting a lot of hype on this kid, and we haven't really heard Shane Beamer talk about him at all, which makes me very nervous. But right now, I got to go with Amaryon Brown. Who else? I would ask you guys, who else would you put in this spot? Who's the best overall right now? It would be unfair to give it to anyone else because nobody else has done damn anything to deserve that type of recognition. So right now, I'm rolling with a guy who's actually done it on this level and been successful and been a threat and been a playmaker. I'll roll with the Georgia Tech transfer, Amaryon Brown. Let's move into season will be successful if. What will spell a successful season for Justin Stepp's group in 2021? And for me, it's very, very simple. Listen, I'm not asking for 7 or 8 guys to be big-time receivers and us just to have, crazy depth and all these guys pan out and be successful. I'm not even asking for like us to have 4 or 5 big-time receivers. For me, I have very low expectations of this room. I'm just going to go ahead and be very transparent and upfront. I have very low expectations for this room. Like I told you guys after the spring game, a lot of guys in this room, a lot of guys, but you got to find some dudes. And right now, nobody has stepped up as a dude. Nobody. There's nothing that we saw during spring practice that would make you change your mind and think that. There's nothing we saw in the spring game that would make you think that. There's nothing we've heard about over summer that could make you think that. And there's nothing early on, at least in fall camp, that would make you think some guy has just completely separated himself as this true number 1 option. But with that being said, for me, guys, simply put, the season will be successful for the Gamecocks wide receivers if a number 1 option emerges. That's it. Just find a number 1 guy. Hey, this is going to be a team that relies on the run game. We totally get that. You're going to ride the backs of Kevin Harris and Marshawn Lloyd and Zaquandre White and Rashad Amos, 4 of 5 returning offensive linemen. There's no secret what this team is going to want to do. You're going to use the tight ends in the passing game, which we'll get into on Thursday's show. But at some point, guys, you're going to have to stretch the field. You're going to have to throw it to a wide receiver and at least make the defense think. Just make them think you might pass. To do that, you've got to have someone step up in that number 1 role. Because guess what? Shai Smith ain't here no more. Brian Edwards, Deebo Samuel, Sidney Rice, Alshon Jeffrey, Bruce Ellington, Ace Sanders, none of those dudes are walking through that door. What you got is what you got. So which one of these guys, hey, what we got to work with is what we got. So which one of these guys is going to step up and be the number 1 option? Which one of these guys is going to emerge out of this group and say, you know what, to hell with it, I'll be the go-to guy? Because you got a lot of guys right now, I feel, and again, I talked about this with Perry Orth in the show before, but you got a lot of guys right now who are sitting around looking at each other like, oh, man, who's going to make the play? Who's going to be the guy that says, you know what, to hell with it, I'm going to be the one that makes the play. I'm going to be the one that goes out there and leads our team in receiving. Who's that guy going to be? You find that number 1 option, I think a lot of the other issues you have might take care of themselves. I really do. I think once you find the number 1 guy, it's also going to take a lot of pressure off of other guys. But if you don't have a number 1 and you're just constantly shuffling guys in and out, like just, basically like a revolving door at receiver every single week, I mean, the passing game already probably won't be a strength, but man, it is going to be a major sore spot if you don't have someone emerge as that true number 1 option. All right, let's move into overall grade for the Gamecocks pass catchers heading in the 2021 football season. And I want to preface it with this, guys, because I told you, right? A lot of you have been hitting me up via DM or when I see you in person or whatever and saying, oh, Chris, the content's great. I love the content, like the energy, the positive momentum, Shane Beamer, everything's great, baseball season. And I appreciate that, first off. I really do. I believe the content is sharpened and things have gotten better the way that, we produce content and make graphics and put out clips and video and social media and everything, right? Everything's improved as it should, and it will continue to improve. And I appreciate you guys reaching out and saying those things. But I think a lot of the reason people have said that is because, oh man, the positivity is great. The positivity is great. And the positivity is great, and it's going to continue to be great. Trust me, my life has exponentially improved since Shane Beamer got this job. But what I told you guys jokingly was this. Hey, when I'm harsh on the position units now, keep the same energy because I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be very realistic when it comes to these position units and this team's deficiencies and where it lacks and what it has to improve on to get to the level we want to see it get to. And so I was looking at my notes from last year's position unit preview talking wide receivers. Guys, get this. I gave that receiver room, the one last year now, with Shai Smith, I gave that room a D+. A D+. So with that being in mind, what do you think I should give this room? What does that say about this year's receiver room when your leading returning catcher had 11 catches for 100 yards and did not even have a touchdown a season ago? What does that say about this group when the guys you have 40 catches for 400 yards and 2 touchdowns? That's what your guys gave you last year. So I look at this group. Again, I think there is potential and there's talent in this room. I like the addition of Justin Stepp. I think that is probably the biggest upgrade at a single position unit. Honestly, no questions asked, because the fact that we had Joe Cox coaching wide receivers, that man don't know a damn thing about playing no damn wide receiver. What he was doing coaching receivers, no wonder we were so bad at the position. But you got Justin Stepp, one of the best in the business. I think he's going to be a hell of an addition. That was a hell of a hire by Shane Beamer. And again, it's like I told you guys after the spring game. You got a lot of guys in this room, okay? Got a lot of guys. But you got to find some dudes, man. That's all you got is guys right now that are taking up a scholarship. You don't really have any big-time contributors. You don't. Not right now, you don't. I love the addition of Amaryon Brown if he pans out to be the guy he is, if he's healthy. I think E.J. Jenkins could be a big-time red zone threat. You know, again, he's going to play receiver and tight end, and we'll talk about him on both shows and how he'll fit in there. I think Jenkins, we all know he could be a big-time red zone threat at 6'7.5". The coaching staff loves him. But, guys, there's no way to sugarcoat it. This position group is arguably the worst or the weakest on the Gamecocks football team. And I love Justin Stepp, and I love the work he's doing, and I have no doubt he's going to turn that room around and have a successful group of pass catchers in his time in Columbia. But right now, when we're in the preseason and we're breaking it down, you got to go off what you know. And right now, what I know about this Gamecocks receiving core, they're not very good. They're just not very good, and they're the weakness of this football team. For that reason, I give the overall grade of the receivers a D-. The only reason I'm not giving them an F is because I feel like if you give them an F, what an F would say is there's no potential. They're just bad. They're just flat out bad. This is going to be a bad group all throughout the year. That's it. And I don't believe that. I think there is talent, right? I think, listen, on the bright side, I think guys like Dakereon Joyner, Xavier Legette, Josh Vann, maybe a Jalen Brooks, maybe E.J. Jenkins becomes an even bigger part of the receiving core on the outside than we thought. Hey, maybe a guy like Trey Atkins is a feel-good story. Maybe Rico Powers and Ja'Cory Caldwell, two guys who, you know, were pretty big pieces of the 2021 recruiting, or excuse me, the 2020 recruiting class that came in as freshmen last fall. Maybe they evolve into something. There are options. Maybe Omega Blake is a true freshman is something you look at, but there are options. There's potential in this room. No question. No question there's potential. A lot of guys, tons of guys in this room. Maybe, hey, I know some of you are saying, well, Chris, what about Ortre Smith? What about Ortre Smith? Maybe Ortre Smith finally proves he can be healthy and stay on the field and even just slightly replicate the success he had as a true freshman in 2017. But again, right now, I have to see it before I believe it. This is a room right now that it's a deficiency. There's no other way to put it. You have to hope and pray that a guy like Amaryon Brown is going to be that dude that transferred from Georgia Tech. He is going to come in and be that playmaker for you, because I don't know who else you can turn to. I truly don't. I truly don't. I mean, you know, I know Jalen Brooks came in last year and, 11 catches for 100 yards. I know he came in late, whatever the LSU game was his first game. I think he had a very much welcome to SEC football type of moment for him. You know, you have guys with potential. There's no question. You have tons of bodies. Hey, Chad Terrell, I didn't mention. I mean, there's so many names you can rattle off when it comes to this group. Now, with that being said, if I had to give a prediction for it, because the overall grade is how I feel about it right now, I like to think that this unit will finish above that. Like, I don't think you're going to see 5 or 6 guys develop into big-time players. I think that's asking way too much. I'd like to think, though, you will have 2 to 3 consistent pass catchers this season. You don't need a ton in the passing game. You don't need guys to go out and be heroes, but you're going to have to throw the football at some point. Again, who are those guys going to be? I have no idea, but you're going to have to throw the ball at some point. Somebody on the outside has got to help Luke Doty out. Somebody has got to keep those safeties honest. You cannot just have guys coming down, loading the box, saying, hey, we're daring you to pass, and then you don't have anybody that can get open. But realistically, guys, right now, I think this receiving room, I think it's fair to say that they will take a step forward. How great of a step forward? I don't know. But here's the thing, guys. I don't think you can be worse than you were a year ago. In regards to like taking away Shai Smith, beyond Shai Smith, can you be worse? I just don't know that you can. Again, the room's a deficiency. Call it for what it is. I think maybe the only way to flip it is going to be in recruiting. And until some of these guys prove that they're big-time ball players, again, until a guy like Shai Smith proves he can be healthy, until a guy like Josh Vann and Xavier Legette actually prove they can be legitimate big-time week-in, week-out SEC wide receivers, until a guy like Jalen Brooks proves he belongs at this level, until guys like Rico Powers and Dakari Caldwell prove they belong on the field at this level. Until that happens, guys, it's really, really hard to bank on it happening. And again, I think most Carolina fans would agree this is our biggest weakness, maybe on the entire football team. And that feels so weird to say because South Carolina football, we have such a proud and rich tradition and history of while our teams maybe haven't been great, the wide receiver position. I mean, we have put out some fantastic wide receivers. I don't see this year's team being one of those, though, that produces a guy like that. So, again, I give the overall grade for the receiving core a D-. I think it's going to be a tough year on the outside. Again, if you can just find that number one option, maybe have a couple of other guys that, that can step up and every now and then, be consistent guys for you. At least have a consistent starting lineup, a starting rotation, if you will. But, yeah, I think the reality of this room is pretty bleak right now. And I think the only way to fix it's in recruiting. You got to go find some big-time guys. You got to go find some big-time players. But I will say this. With that being said, Justin Stepp has the greatest opportunity of any assistant coach to make his impact felt immediately. Because if he can get guys like Legette and Vann and Smith and Brooks to play their best football, we're going to say, wow. Justin Stepp deserves a raise. Justin Stepp, he needs to get all the credit because these were the same guys we've seen all throughout their careers that really haven't done anything. All of a sudden, they're big-time football players. You're going to have to credit Justin Stepp for that. So, again, a lot of potential, a lot of guys. Got to find some dudes. Got to find some dudes in that receiver. So, again, that's going to do it for the Gamecocks wide receivers heading in the 2021 football season. Guys, would love to hear your thoughts. What would you grade the receivers? Who's your most approved? Who's your best overall? What'll spell a successful season for you? What are you most looking for from the Gamecocks receivers? Because until we see different, I think, unfortunately, this is just going to have to be a team that relies on run game and in the passing game, uses the tight ends, uses the backs. And until someone steps up as the number one guy or until a couple of guys step up as consistent options on the outside, it's going to be very makeshift and just very kind of, what you have is what you have, and we'll just try our best with it and see what happens. But, it's tough because I love the wide receiver position. I do. It's like probably my favorite position on the football field, but got to find some dudes. Flat out. So, again, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the receiving core heading in the 2021 football season. All right, speaking of football, fall camp, folks. We're 3 practices in. Gamecocks will be scrimmaging this weekend. I wanted to talk fall camp, a couple of early fall camp impressions. Shane Beamer and players speaking to the media on Thursday of last week. Of course, practice is in full swing right now. And I'll tell you this, we posted some of the quotes in graphics on social media. And of course, if you follow on Twitter, we posted all the comments from Media Day or most all of them. Man, I mean, it's crazy how vastly improved the culture is. And guys are very open and very honest about it. When you have guys, and we heard Gavin Bennett on the podcast touch on this. But when you have guys that are literally saying, yeah, we're actually excited to come to the facility. We're excited to be with our teammates and our coaches. We're looking forward to getting in the building and working and perfecting our craft. I mean, I know people, I've seen some people in comments like, oh my God, stop talking about the culture. That's not why we lost. dude, I think it was worse than we even imagined. I think it was worse than we could have even imagined or even thought. And it's crazy to hear the players expand on that and talk about that. But again, I think the early thoughts on the comments is, man, the culture is vastly improved. Of course, guys, last week, Friday, we got news of Kevin Harris having the procedure on his back. Now, that was something we knew for probably over a month. Wasn't anything really said on social media, but Kevin Harris did have a back procedure. And, of course, nobody acted irrationally or overreacted when I listed Marshawn Lloyd as RB1. And right now what I'm hearing is Marshawn Lloyd is pacing to be RB1. Now, the reason I list him, guys, is because Kevin Harris probably won't even play the first game. He probably won't, because what's the point? It's EIU and you're coming off of that back procedure. Why rush him? Why rush him out against the EIU? You're going to need it more week 3 against Georgia. That's what you should be worried about for there. So I think Marshawn Lloyd certainly pacing to be RB1. What an opportunity that this is. And I know people hate it. You know, I think Gamecock fans, that they want to be able to wrap their arms around a guy and embrace a guy and sort of ride a guy, if you will, you know, for his entire career. But guys, this is business, man. Like you go down with an injury, it's next man up. And guess what? If a guy like Marshawn Lloyd, who's a former 5-star prospect and a big-time ball player when healthy, dude, if he does his thing, I'm telling you guys right now, this might piss some people off. But when 110% healthy, even with the year Kevin Harris had last year, and I love Kevin Harris. What a great position we're in, having both those guys fighting for carries. But Marshawn Lloyd, 100% healthy, that's the best running back on this roster. I genuinely believe that. I mean, there's a reason he was as highly regarded as he was. And right now, pacing to be RB1, certainly in the first game, but it would not shock me, dude, guys, if he goes off in game 1 and week 2, and he could be RB1 for this entire season. And Kevin Harris be more so of the short yardage, the change of pace. But, you know, we'll see. I want to put all respect on Kevin Harris's name, but right now it sounds like early in fall camp, Marshawn Lloyd, he's healthy, he is impressing, and he is pacing right now to be RB1. Also, secondary is a work in progress. No surprise there. I think you're still limited with bodies. How much is Karan Prunty going to impact this secondary? I think he'll be a nice addition. Again, we'll talk more about secondary in a couple of weeks with our position unit preview series, but secondary still a work in progress. On the other side, we were just talking receivers, guys. It sounds like right now Jalen Brooks and Josh Vann are your top 2 receivers. Beyond that, I think guys like Dakaryon Joyner, maybe an Shai Smith. You know, we've heard Rico Powers' name a little bit here and there, but I mean, guys, right now, I think it's just finding guys they can depend on. It's finding guys on the outside you can depend on. Bottom line. I mean, this is the time right now in fall camp where, hey, if you can't do it in practice, they're not going to put you out there in the game. They're not, right? If you can't do it in practice, they ain't going to put you out there in the game, because if you can't do it, no. So I think it's all right now just trying to find guys they can depend on and can turn to and are going to make plays for you. But right now it sounds like Jalen Brooks and Josh Vann, those are the 2 guys that are leading the way at the receiver position, guys. Like I said, first scrimmage set for this weekend. We'll have a guy out there to get some feedback from and some tidbits and things like that. So tune into the show next week, and also join the Big Cock Club. That's where I'll be posting a lot of the tidbits and stuff like that. Some of the I don't want to call it like insider info, but just info from the scrimmages and the practices and stuff like that. Really good stuff there over the Big Cock Club, patreon.com/Big Cock Club, and join the Discord. That's where most of the conversation is going down. But again, early fall camp impressions. I mean, I think things are going really, really well. Obviously, access is very limited. We haven't heard of any injuries, knock on wood. So things seem to be going very, very well for Shane Beamer and his football team. As like I said, guys, we now sit just 26 days away from another Carolina kickoff. All right, let's get to your news and notes and then the listener questions. And we got a great interview as well, guys. News and notes starting off. Congratulations to Dawn Staley and Asia Wilson, who officially brought home the gold medal in Tokyo. The gold medal was Asia Wilson's first. Dawn Staley's first as a coach, but 7th overall. Carolina women's basketball just continues to crush, man. I mean, literally, we're getting closer and closer to the start of basketball season. Women's basketball might not lose a game. I mean, seriously, they really, truly might not lose a game. So congratulations again, Gamecocks women's basketball making their impact felt in the Olympics. You absolutely love to see that. On the diamond, some big-time news on the diamond that happened late last week. Stuart Lake, assistant, officially stepping down, which opened the door for Scott Wingo, the Gamecocks legend, returning to Gamecocks baseball, A+ hire by Mark Kingston. Also, some great news for the Carolina lineup as Andrew Eyster made it official. He will return again. This was something we basically knew all summer, but Andrew Eyster making it officially official. He is back to lead this South Carolina lineup in the 2021 season. So again, obviously huge news for Carolina baseball. I expect Eyster to be your 3 or 4 hole hitter. And I don't know if you guys realize this. Eyster was the only player to hit 300 or better in SEC play in this 2021 season. So very excited for Andrew Eyster's return. I think obviously a very, very great addition to the 2022 squad, and a squad that's going to it's just flat out going to look very, very different at the wide receiver position. So, really, really great stuff there for the Yardcocks. All right, let's get to your listener questions. We got a few here. Austin G_45 says, do you think EJ and Bell could help this area considering they're more athletes, wide receivers than tight ends? Yes, for sure. Again, Austin, EJ is literally listed as a wide receiver on the website. Jaheim Bell. And again, I'm going to talk tight ends on Thursday's show. So you make a great point. I'm excited to break down the tight ends because they're going to be a huge part of the passing game. I don't even know if it's by choice, but they're going to have to be because we don't have the options right now at wide receiver. But no, I mean, I think both those guys could be and will be big-time contributors. Again, whether it's a tight end, whether they're split out, whether it's like Jaheim Bell at the H-back, whatever it is. Yes, I think both guys will be very, very much so involved. You're going to have to be creative in the passing game. Like, you're just going to it's not going to be an offense, I feel like, guys. You don't have the guys that just line them up and just drop back and let them run their routes and they're going to get open. I hate to say that. I don't think that's the reality right now, though. So, yeah, getting creative with those guys, I think is certainly something you'll see. Hovey says, I heard Vann is looking good. And here's the thing, guys, I'll say this, because I know a lot of fans are excited about Josh Vann. And, God, I mean, the amount of Ortre Smith comments is, I mean, it's great. But, guys, here's the thing, and I'll speak specifically to a guy like Ortre Smith. And if Ortre's hearing this, bro, it's all love. It's nothing personal. But, dude, until Ortre Smith does it, I've sold my stock. I've sold my stock on Ortre Smith, man. I mean, people are literally citing, man, he could be a really good player. He could be a bit – based off what he did in 2017, guys, that was 4 years ago. 4 years ago. We're really basing it off of that. So, hey, go out there and catch for 1,000 yards. Go have double-digit touchdowns and make me look stupid. But I'm just not going into this season with these unrealistic, crazy expectations and putting expectations on guys who have been here, especially the guys who have been here multiple years and have never done anything. And Josh Vann's another one. And it's a damn shame because Josh Vann and Ortre Smith, 2 very highly touted prospects, 2 guys you felt great when you signed them, they ain't done jack shit since they got on campus. That's just the honest truth. They haven't. They're too good of ball players to have put up the measly statistics they have. I mean, really, truly. So I hope that's the case. I mean, again, we're hearing about Josh Vann, how good he looks. Dude, I have absolutely no expectations for this group this season. None. I have hopes that Amaryon Brown is going to be the dude coming from Georgia Tech, but everyone else, and then I have hopes that E.J. Jenkins will be a great red zone target. But everyone else that returns, man, I have no expectations. I don't know what to expect from these guys. I'm not expecting anything, and I'm very much in show me mode with the wide receivers. I like Justin Stepp. I think his group is going to play hard. I think they're going to be physical. I think they're going to come to work every single day, and I think they're going to do all they can. But dude, I'm not hitching my wagon to this wide receiver room right now, or anybody in it. Like go show me. Go show me what you can do. Go show me. Don't tell me how good a guy looks or that. No, go show us, because we've heard the hype. We've heard hype around a couple of these guys, and they haven't done anything. So we'll see. I think Josh Vann, obviously, all these guys, they're all at this level for a reason. You're not an SEC wide receiver because you suck at football. So maybe it really just was coaching, right? And that's what the hope is, right? That it really just was lack of development and just not being put in the best possible position to be successful. But again, I'm very much wait and see right now. I'll be honest with you, Hubby. NOLA Gamecocks win the SEC or win the Sugar Bowl, win the SEC, and it's not even close. I mean, what are you talking? No, it's not even close. Win the SEC. Let's see. A Carpenter V, is Smoke hurt? How come Justin Smoke didn't play for Team USA? I have no idea. I don't think he's hurt, though. Russell _ E24, last question. He says, how good do you think Amaryon Brown is? He was pretty good at Georgia Tech when he got a chance. Yeah, listen, I think Amaryon Brown could be really good. Like I said, my biggest fear is I'm just overhyping him going into the season because I haven't heard anything from Shane Beamer or even Justin Stepp about him. So, yeah, I mean, you look at his film, though, at Georgia Tech, guys, and like I said, at this level of football, Power 5 level, he's the most proven of anybody in that room. He's actually made big plays at this level. There's nobody else outside of Shai Smith who had a decent freshman year in 2017. There's nobody else you can look at in this group of receivers. There's nobody else you can look at and say, man, that guy at one point was a big time dude. There's just not. There's not. Truly, there's not. So I like Amaryon Brown. I think he could be a big time player. He's a speedster. He's a guy that if nothing else, he can stretch the field and keep a defense honest. I mean, you're going to have to keep defenses honest to open up running lanes. You're going to have to. So I think Amaryon Brown can be very, very good. We'll see. We've heard nothing about him. I don't know if he's still nursing an injury or if they're just trying to keep him a secret. I have no idea. But, I think he could be a very, very good player for us. And I think he could be our number one wide receiver. And I'm expecting him to be our number one wide receiver. So we'll see if it happens. All right, guys. Appreciate the listener questions, guys. As always, appreciate you guys being interactive. Now, we have a fantastic conversation. If you followed the Gamecock beat in 2004, 5, and especially 07 to 11 for the Post and Courier, Travis Haney, an incredible conversation, incredible interview, and what a person this guy is, man. A storyteller, a creator, just an incredible human being. And I appreciate him taking the time, sitting down with me, chatting, reliving some of the greatest moments in Gamecocks football history, and Steve Spurrier and all the great athletes he covered and the overall media landscape. And also a lot of great insight, guys, and perspective on new head coach Shane Beamer. Travis Haney actually has a relationship with Shane Beamer. Really good stuff as he breaks down the Gamecocks football program, all that, guys. A incredible conversation. So sit back, relax, enjoy. It's all brought to you, guys, by our friends at Manscaped. Guys, attention, listeners. Whoa. Why did I say it that way? Anyways, listeners across the galaxy, all the way from Australia to Houston, do we have a pube problem? If so, our friends at Manscaped have cleared you for takeoff with their 4th generation and brand new Lawnmower 4.0. Kick your pubes to the next planet with the Performance Package 4.0. The orbits in your pants will feel like you're in zero gravity when you use the best tools for the job from the leaders in male grooming. Guys, join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get your rocket ready for takeoff by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code TSUS20. Guys, we've all been there, right? We're manscaping. We're trimming ourselves up. We cut ourselves. We nick ourselves. It's bleeding. It's burning. It hurts. It's the worst. Get rid of that. Are you ready for an out-of-world experience, fellas? We'll look no further than the Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped. It's just taken off not only in the USA, but Canada, the UK, across Europe, Australia, South America, and Singapore. Guys, inside this package, you'll find the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, Performance Boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your entire solar system. Guys, scheduled for liftoff, our new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, this spaceship's here to guide you on a journey to trim your body, balls, butt, and even your anus. Right, crazy. This 4th generation trimmer also features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 is a 7,000 RPM motor. A new multi-function on-off switch can engage a travel lock and is even waterproof. The Lawnmower 4.0 also has a 4,000K LED spotlight you can turn on and off when needed for a more precise shave throughout your travels across the universe. Guys, the Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Weed Whacker. It's like having a little astronaut to chop your worst weeds up top in your nose and your ear. The Weed Whacker is also waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual-blade system. Guys, this nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology, which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes. Do not forget to use the Crop Preserver ball deodorant as well, guys, and their Crop Reviver to help your little planets be on their A game while feeling the sun's heat. Guys, Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Abort Harry Balls and Buzz Lightyear that Woody with Manscaped. You guys get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code TSUS20 at manscaped.com. Again, that's 20% off and free shipping with the code TSUS at manscaped.com. For a clean trinity and beyond, your space balls Will, thank you. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Now enjoy this conversation with Travis Haney. All right, joining us in the Spurs Up Show, guys. Very excited. He covered the Gamecocks since basically 2004, but officially for the Post and Courier in Charleston, South Carolina from 2007 to 2011. He's worked for places such as the Augusta Chronicle, the Oklahoman, ESPN, the Athletic, the Atlanta Braves, the Charlotte 49ers. He's also the author of a couple of great Gamecocks books, including Gamecock Glory, Gamecock Encore, and Classic Clashes of the Carolina-Clemson football rivalry. But most importantly, someone who knows the heartbeat of this fan base, understands what South Carolina football and Gamecock Nation's all about, and guys, has done fantastic work throughout his career. Somebody I followed as a young fan, up and coming, reading his material. Really, really excited to chat with and have on the show. Travis Haney. Travis, I appreciate you taking the time, and it's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much for doing this.
Likewise. That was like a lengthy bio, like I'm some important person. But I'll say this for real, man. Like, I'm from Tennessee, but a lot of people nationally or even in that state, they think I'm from South Carolina because that was such a important timepiece window in my life and really in the life of South Carolina athletics from 07 to 11. I mean, you know what happened in that window of time, an SEC East championship, obviously the baseball titles. So to be there for that particular piece of time, it was really influential, not just professionally, but personally for me to be around a lot of that success. And as you said, be in the position, fortunate enough to even write a couple of books about it.
For sure. Travis, before we get into that, I wanted to go all the way back to the beginning. I know we were just kind of touching on it a little bit off air, but what made you want to get into it? Obviously, the media world, it's really interesting how it's evolved and it's changed. And like I said, really, I feel like when you were coming up, it was all print media and the internet was kind of
I'm not old, Chris. Yeah, you're right.
It was like first starting to really buzz and everything. But like I said, growing up a Gamecock fan, I remember reading you, and I know we talked about Joe Person a little bit off air, his work as well, which we can get into more in just a second. But, you know, it goes all the way back to the Augusta Chronicle, but I feel like before that, but just kind of talk about the beginning of your media journey, what made you want to get into it. Obviously, I look at you, Travis, as a creator. You're a storyteller. Your work obviously reflects that. But the beginning, what was the start of the journey for Travis Haney, if you will?
Well, I started writing for my hometown newspaper in South Georgia when I was 15, covering my own high school's games. And I just knew I probably had a really modest athletic future as far as playing. So probably need to figure out some other way to stay involved in sports. And I knew I wanted to work in sports. I just wasn't sure how. And I had an opportunity when I was in high school to do it. And just kind of fell in love with it. And so pursued that throughout college at Tennessee. And then my first professional opportunity was in Anderson in early 2004. And then you mentioned I was in Augusta, went to Atlanta, covered the Braves for a little bit, and then came back in 2007. So I was in the state of South Carolina for, half of a decade in that period of time. And really that's where I learned a lot about beat work and about that particular athletic department program and watched a lot of things change, not just the winning that we mentioned, but the aesthetics of the entire place. I can't remember what it was called at first, the new arena, what it was called at first. I think before it was Colonial Center, but anyway, it was built in 2004. And, it was just the start of a real era of change, I feel like, all around Columbia and USC. So I grew up, the program grew up and kind of in the same time frame. And I love storytelling. You mentioned that. And to be able to be one of the main storytellers for those baseball teams and still have a connection to them. I still talk to Michael Roth a pretty good bit. Congrats on being a new dad to him and Rachel. So I'm excited for them. But it was a really special time in my life in a lot of different ways, and affirmed my decision to be in journalism, and went on from there to Oklahoma and ESPN and all those other stops. And now, as you just learned, I'm completely out of it. I'm completely out of the sports media game for the first time in 20 years. But I can look back and the memories and experiences I have, like a lot of my very favorite ones would be from that time in Columbia.
Do you feel like it's something, Travis, where you picked it up naturally, or was it something you feel you evolved and really grew as you went on?
A little of both, probably. I think I probably was more inclined. I'm not a math person in any way, shape, or form. Right. So I was probably always more inclined to work with words and a little bit of creative content type stuff. And I think I just saw the world that way to begin with whenever I was a young guy. And I don't think I realized it until I really got into it. And then the more I got into it, I fell in love with the quote unquote craft of it, and had mentors who were 5, 10, 15, 20 years older than me that I followed and read and learned from, including people in that state. You know, you mentioned Joe. He was a great mentor as somebody who was a quote competitor, but, you know, Joe and I have always been friendly. We still talk. We were athletic teammates there for a little while, me with the Titans, him with the Panthers. And, you know, Ken Berger, the late Ken Berger, was a great influence on me, just a great person to be around as a young reporter. And Gene Sapikoff was a great person to learn from as well whenever I was at the Post and Courier. So I was always fortunate, especially in South Carolina, to be around smart, driven, hardworking people who could kind of help me learn the ropes. So whatever natural ability I had was dwarfed by just trying to learn as I went. And just when opportunity came, to know when to seize it. You know, we keep talking about the books, but I just remember leaving Rosenblatt after that first one in 2010 and being like, somebody's going to write a book about this. It might as well be me. And immediately started a plan on that. So I think it's just a willingness to work at it and be different. You know, I think Twitter was a huge piece that allowed me to create a little bit of brand identity in Columbia. And I'm grateful for that, because it was a little tricky. You know, my outlet was in Charleston, but I was living in Columbia. So I'm an hour and a half, 2 hours away from where my audience is. So to be able to connect with Columbia as a community, and I really felt that, like I felt that love from the community because of two things. One was social media, and two was the advent of 107.5 The Game in 2007 as well. So the confluence of those two things, and I got to do a ton of radio, and that allowed me to meet a lot of fans and just really feel like I was a part of the community, even though I worked for a paper 90 miles away.
Yeah, Travis, what's interesting, I want to get more into the 2010, 2011. Again, you were there during really the greatest run in Gamecocks athletics history, at least the beginning of it. But you mentioned you grew sort of with this program. And I'm curious to hear, because, again, you went to Tennessee. So you're no stranger to big rivalries, Tennessee, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama. And we know about all the great SEC rivalries. You're a guy, you grew up in SEC country, obviously. But you mentioned the brawl, and I'm assuming that was like maybe your first real taste of Carolina-Clemson. I mean, what were you thinking to yourself? You're like, what the hell did I get myself into with these two squads?
Well, I mean, I just remember how bizarre that whole week was, where you didn't really know what was going on with Lou. There was a lot of rumbling behind the scenes about what his future was going to be. And obviously we found out later that he had addressed that with the team. And that was kind of a factor in a lot of the angst from the USC side. And then the night before, I remember being in Tigertown Tavern, you know, right downtown Clemson, watching the Malice at the Palace, the Pacers Pistons brawl, that the next day Tommy Bowden said that was a factor in the South Carolina Clemson brawl, which was just so surreal to like connect those two events. And I'm not sure that's necessarily true, but you know, it was a weird moment. And I think regardless if I was 21 or my age now, it's a strange moment. I was on the opposite corner of the field from where it was happening. So it was happening over closer to the hill, and I was closer to that other end zone.
Right.
And I just remember my instinct was, am I supposed to run toward this thing or run away from this thing? Because I think when you're on the field, your first instinct is like, is this going to spill into the stands?
Right.
Are people going to come crawling out onto the field? And we got a big problem. Right. So, and also just the relationship logistically, like it was flat. So I couldn't really see what was going on over there. You just knew it looked like there were a lot of people involved, and it wasn't ending very quickly. You know, we see scrums at practice and games, and, you know, you see that stuff, but it breaks up pretty quickly. This was like, it just kept going. You know, they talk about like an earthquake feel, it's 30 seconds and it feels like it's like 3 minutes or 30 minutes. That's sort of like what this felt like, that it just kept going and going. And it probably only lasted 30 seconds, but it felt like it could have been 3 hours but yeah, it was a surreal way to start. And then the aftermath of no bowls, and, you know, you got players stealing stuff out of the building. And it was just a really bizarre set of circumstances. And I don't think anybody would hide from it. A dark day for both programs that almost immediately had a lot of success. So bringing in Spurrier and ultimately making the move to elevate Dabo were the things that changed those two programs. But you think of from them going from that point in time in 2004 to where they both were, where it's like a top 10, top 15 matchup in 2012, 2011. I mean, that's not a lot of time. And so you got to give a lot of credit for the people involved in those two programs for putting that behind them and really turning the page to have success.
Now, Travis, you mentioned Steve Spurrier, and of course, those were the rumblings as well, along with Lou's, retirement, that Steve Spurrier was going to be hired. And, what's crazy, you talk to Gamecock fans and even former players, but everyone involved with USC. I mean, most people never thought a guy like Lou Holtz would step foot on the campus, much less a guy like Steve Spurrier. And sure enough, that's what happened. But from your side, the media perspective, how excited were you to get to cover? Again, Lou Holtz is a character in his own right, but there's nobody that tops Steve Spurrier, and the zingers and the one-liners and his personality and everything he brings to the college game. Like when you found out he had gotten the job, and I'm assuming you were with the Augusta Chronicle covering the Gamecocks at that point when he got hired. And of course, you were with the Post and Courier all throughout 07 to 11, and you really saw the evolution of the Gamecocks program and some of the greatest ever wear the garnet and black come through. But I mean, for you, I'd have to imagine, Travis, it was like a giddy feeling. Like, I get to cover Steve Spurrier. Like, this is like every media member's dream, basically.
Yeah. And so I was at the introductory press conference in, I guess it would have been December 2004. Mm-hmm. And I remember all of it vividly. And I've been to a lot of press conferences since then, but I remember that one really distinctly because of who he was. I mean, he was such a huge figure in college football, and obviously the Washington NFL experience did not go very well. So here he was trying to kind of put himself back in relevance, or try and put himself back in a successful light. And I remember the why not us? That was the thing that stuck out to me, that he leaned on the Red Sox had finally won a World Series. So why can't South Carolina be successful? And it took a while, but he turned out to be right about that. And so I do remember being happy about it, but that was also the time when I left to go cover the Braves. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be here.
Right.
And then when I came back in 2007, it just hadn't gotten off the ground. So I think I was excited in some respects to be covering him, but also curious if it was actually going to work, because, they'd had moderate success. They knocked off Florida. Like, they'd had wins, like they beat Tennessee, but they hadn't had any. They were going to really low level bowl games, and it obviously didn't start the way that it finished, or that window of time from 09 to 12 or 13. So I wasn't really sure what I was getting into, to be honest with you. But I do remember, I'll tell a story. It involves you a person. I think it was 07. It was the first Spurrier media golf outing that I got to play in. And so I'm riding in the cart with Spurrier, which was a pretty intimidating experience for, I didn't know him at that point in time. Certainly, I think it's the only time I played golf with him. He's not the most fun person to play golf with. I'm sure other people on the show have told you that. Like, he wants to play so freaking fast that it's uncomfortable. Like, I mean, you're not in any sort of rhythm at all. Like, I'm somebody who plays a pretty good amount, and you're just so stuck in, like, I don't want to piss this guy off, that you're trying to just play as fast as you can and like lightning quick. And the funniest part of that day was, so it was me, Joe Person from the State, and Rick Scoppy, who was at that point in time the beat writer for the Greenville paper, playing with Spurrier. And we got sort of hot early on. Like, we started playing pretty well, and you could see the competitiveness in his eyes. Like, you could see it start to come on, and he's like, okay, guys, come on, we can win this thing. Like, he's wanting to win his own dang media golf tournament. And so we get to the turn, and the way that it was set up was he was supposed to hand off and go play the back nine with the radio guys. So it would have been like Phil Kornblut and those guys. And the DC at that time, Tyrone Nix, was supposed to play with us on the riders on the backside. And Spurrier goes, no, we're just going to keep on going. We're just going to keep going. We're winning. We're going to keep playing. So not only, just imagine like these stunned faces of people who thought they were about to get to play with Spurrier and they didn't. And then we wound up actually playing through their group, which I've never done in a scramble in the history of any golf tournament. Like, we just kept going. Like, we didn't stop. And that was him. I mean, he was competitive enough that he thought he had a chance to win his own golf tournament, which we didn't. So that was the worst part, was the back nine. We didn't play well. and he's, doing everything short of MFing us that we're not carrying our part. And I remember he was giving me a hard time about like where I was hitting my driver. And I'm like, dude, like you're not doing anything either. I don't really understand. But letting him down sucked. Like that wasn't a very fun moment. But that and him finding out that I went to Tennessee, he thought that was really fun. And so he started reliving some of the best Florida wins against Tennessee and all the digs he had against Fulmer, and he had a good time with that. That was the funny thing about him was he would always associate. I mean, we can be honest at this point. I think like he's actually a pretty socially awkward person, right? And so like in conversation, his buddies like Bob Stoops and those guys, like he's gonna be tight and cool with them, but like somebody like me or Joe or whoever, like he's gonna find like this one thing. And then that's the thing that he knows you as. And then he'll bring that one thing up. And that's like his way of whatever. I guess he's being nice, trying to connect with you. Right. But, for me, it was always Tennessee, right? Like, so it was always, hey, Trev, how the Vols doing? And at that point in time, it was not very good. And so he always knew what he was doing as far as getting those jabs in, even if it was just in private.
Just peak Spurrier, man. Peak Spurrier. Well, you mentioned Travis when you got there that 2007, of course, and I remember those years vividly, obviously. But South Carolina really was kind of in limbo. 07 was the year you start 6-1, you're sixth in the country, then you lose five straight. You don't even get to a bowl game.
First year.
Yeah, 2008. I mean, 2008, Travis, is one of those years I think most fans look back and they're like, "What happened in 2008?" Like it's like one of the least memorable years, and I don't mean any disrespect to guys that were on that team, but it was a very strange year. And I remember being at the final game against Clemson, rain game, miserable. You played Garcia, smelly. It was just one of the worst games I've ever seen, probably at quarterback ever. For South Carolina, just the way that those guys played. Whatever.
They're alternating plays.
Right. It's just, nobody could have. That is one of the memories actually from 08. And I've talked to Garcia and actually Chris Smelly about this, was the Arkansas game where literally every single play they were in and out. And one of the funniest things was Garcia told me, he's like, "Yeah, bro, I told Coach Spurrier, if you ever do that again, I'm transferring." Straight up.
It was brutal.
Yeah, it was brutal. And they won the game. That was the funny part.
Absolutely no sense.
They won the game, so you can't say anything to the guy. But 2008 was a really weird year, but you kind of started to see the pieces come together slowly but surely. 2009, again, they started to get that cast of characters I mentioned from the 2007 class with Garcia leading the way and Wesley Saunders and Travian Robertson. And you started to get these Mr. Footballs. And again, you talked about seeing the evolution of Carolina football all the way from 2004 to what culminated in 10 and then 11 when you were there. How crazy was it for you, again, going through 2009, 2010? Again, you really grew with the Gamecocks, like you said, and you grew and, you came into your maturation, if you will, with guys like Steven Garcia and Marcus Lattimore getting on campus and Gilmore and Jeffrey. And because I know as fans, I mean, we sat back and we're like, I can't believe we're going to Atlanta. Like, it's actually happening. South Carolina's going to an SEC championship game, or South Carolina won 11 games. Like, how crazy, I guess, was it from your perspective? Not obviously it led to success even beyond that, but just sitting back and looking like, holy hell, how far this Carolina football program has come under Steve Spurrier. I mean, from your vantage point, like how insane was that?
Well, I mean, you mentioned that 08 season, and that probably was one of the low points, if not the low point of Spurrier's time, was that UConn papajohns.com bowl game.
Oh God.
It's 20 degrees in Birmingham. It is absolutely miserable. The stadium is empty. They've run out of pizza. Yeah. And South Carolina just no shows, against a not very good UConn team that had enough to beat you, but South Carolina should have won that game 10 times out of 10. Right. And I just remember the frustration of the players after that and thinking I don't know if this is going to happen. Right. And that lingering quarterback questions, Garcia couldn't get right, and the other options, no offense to those other guys, just weren't great SEC options. And I just didn't know if it was ever going to happen, and I wondered selfishly, for my career, God dang, man, I came here thinking Spurrier's going to get it going. This is going to happen, and I'm going to be along for the ride to see some really cool years. And I just wasn't real sure about it. And I don't think there's any secret that two things had to happen. One, they got the staff right, I think, finally. When Ellis Johnson, probably most notably, was something that changed the scheme, changed clearly the recruiting ability and philosophy. And really just a lot of things shifted at that point in time. I think Sean Elliott was another huge addition. They'd had a little churn there with Wolford leaving after 1 year and trying to get that offensive line room right, even before they recruited a little on a higher level, just making sure they were getting the most out of the guys that they had, because the size was unbelievable. I mean, Justin Sorensen is a bear. Like, he's a huge human. Yeah. And like, they were able to get the most, I thought, out of some of those guys as time continued. So got the staff right, and then getting the staff right allowed them to open doors in recruiting. And when you saw what was happening in February's, that was when you thought, okay, this has a real chance to change, because you knew they were getting players in that were every bit as good. They're beating out Alabama, Clemson, Georgia for all these players, and your USC in Alshon's case. And you're thinking, okay, this is starting to change. They're not beating mid-level Power 5 teams anymore. They're beating the best to get these players. And you thought, if they don't get this done one way or the other, we're going to know whether this is a successful experiment or not. And sure enough, it was. And yeah, I think I'm trying to think of the one that really, I think so. Gilmore and Swearinger came in, or Holloman, sorry, not Swearinger. They came in together as a mid-year guys in January. And I remember interviewing them. SID, Steve Fink set up interviews with them, and talking to them, you're like, these guys are different. They look different. They sound different. They're built different. These are players that you would expect to see at those programs that are winning championships. And then Lattimore, I think, happened after that. And you started to really get a sense that, okay, this is a program that really has a chance to change. And from then it was, I mean, honestly, Chris, it was just about quarterback at that point in time, because he felt like they built up pretty much every position around quarterback. And then it was just the mystery of, and I'm friends with Steve, and we still talk too. Right. So I'm not saying anything to you that I wouldn't say to him, but it was just the mystery of what you were going to get out of him. And could he stay on the right path, and how long would it take Connor to develop behind him if you needed him? And I remember going to Flowery Branch and interviewing Connor and his dad before he signed, and even getting a sense, this is a coach's kid, this is a gym rat. I mean, as we saw, him and Steven couldn't be any more different in terms of their makeups and just the way that they approach their college years. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it was a great thing for USC that Connor came along when he did, just to give them some stability at that position. And then he wound up exceeding probably any expectations that anyone had at that point.
Yeah, and you could definitely tell, Travis, I think even before 2011, when everything happened with Steven, you could tell Spurrier saw something in Connor and really liked Connor, because you don't get the type of opportunities I feel like Shaw got when 2010 he comes in the fourth quarter against Auburn. It's like, I mean, the most weird absurd, deal. Like crazy.
That was a weird
putting
deal.
A true freshman out there in that moment. And then 2011, he wins the starting job for the first game, and you have a guy, Garcia, who's been there for 4 or 5 years. I mean, you could tell, like, Spurrier likes this guy. Like, he sees something in this guy. Obviously, like you said, being a coach's kid, and I think it was, I'm not trying to speak for Shaw or Spurrier or whatever, but it felt like to me like Shaw was that guy that you tell him to jump, he's going to say how high. Like, he's a coach's kid. He's going to do exactly what Spurrier wants him to do. He's going to put the ball exactly where he wants him to put it. And I agree with you. I think that was a huge part of the success that we saw 11, 12, 13. There's no secret there. Obviously, again, Travis, you covered South Carolina football, and I want to get to the baseball side really quickly because, of course, just back-to-back national titles happen, no big deal. But you covered a lot of big-time football games, and I think while you were there, 2009 Ole Miss, 2010 Alabama, 2010 Florida in the Swamp, obviously the SEC championship game, all the games in 2011 in Athens against Georgia. Is there one that stands out for you as like the craziest or just most memorable game that you've ever covered that week, that weekend, that game specifically? Just like a moment that stands out for you covering the Gamecocks, if you will.
I enjoyed hearing you. I was like trying to think of those as you rattled them off there. So that Ole Miss game, I think a lot of people point to as kind of the turning point of when it really shifted. Like, Can we do it? To yes, we can do it. There was a Kentucky game that was a Thursday night game that was also really similar to that Ole Miss game. I feel like, I think for me, it probably is that Florida game at the Swamp, because you're covering kind of this turning point moment where it's Spurrier back where he had all his success. They've got to get a win on the road at Florida. Not a great Florida team, but still Florida. And then Lattimore in kind of this defining moment for his time at South Carolina before all the injuries derailed what he was doing, like put the team on his back and found a way. And that moment you could feel, even in Gainesville and trying to get back the next day, you could feel the energy from Columbia about what that moment meant in a really similar way to what the College World Series championships were like. That we were in Omaha, but you could feel the energy from half a country away about what had just happened, that some history, a box got checked that had been unchecked for ever. And so that, I think, was probably the game in the moment, even though it wasn't a home game. So you didn't have that celebration. But no, I mean, it's the Alabama game. I don't think there's any question about it. It is. Yeah. I mean, I remember me and Michael Haney, who is not my brother, but we always joke that he is my brother. Yeah. We rode in a golf cart from their radio site at Bojangles, RIP Bojangles, and
seriously
rode up to the Horseshoe to game day and like had these passes to like watch game day from the side stage, and then rode back. And just like that whole day just kind of felt there was magic on that whole day. And it's hard to explain, like even that morning, it just felt like something different was about to happen. And granted, that didn't turn out to be that was a 3-loss Alabama team. But still, I mean, in the middle of that run for South Carolina to have that game and just kind of have everything go perfectly for an afternoon. And some of the Alshon plays are just absolutely incredible. The one where he beasts Drake or Patrick on the sideline is one of, that comes to mind immediately when I think about South Carolina football. Yeah. And I remember the postscript to that day is I lived at one of the condos that was like right around the corner from the stadium. So I was walking home from the stadium and I walked past where the old coaches' offices were in the parking lot. And sure enough, Spurrier standing there in the parking lot. And it was like 10:30 at night. And I probably scared him to death. I was just like, hey, Steve, hey. And he's kind of figured out who I was. And he's like, oh, hey, Trav. And he just starts like gushing about how that day was for him. And I just thought that was, for me personally, a really unique moment, that this was very clearly a historically big moment for the whole program and school. And to run into him the way that I did and kind of hear what it meant to him in terms of getting over the hump. And, you beat Alabama. That it's 10 years later, and that's still a really big deal in college football. You know what I mean? So that was a really significant moment. I remember being on Feinbaum earlier that week, one of the first few times I was on as that had me call in or whatever. And I said, I'm not just saying this, Paul, but I really think South Carolina has a chance in this game. And he about laughed me off the show. He thought that was the most ridiculous thing that he'd ever heard. He was still based in Alabama then, but I had a feeling that week that they were talent-wise pretty well positioned, and they were feeling pretty good, and everything just clicked for them. But that was a really memorable day.
For sure. Now, like I said, Travis, during your run in Columbia, your stint covering the Gamecocks, South Carolina had some pretty good success on the baseball field as well, back-to-back national championships, which you documented in your books. And also, I want to give some love to the basketball team, too, because that 2010 year specifically, that was the year the trifecta. You beat the number 1 ranked Kentucky Wildcats on the hardwood. You beat the number 1 seed Arizona State in Omaha with your backs against the wall. And then you beat the number 1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide, which, again, for a media guy, and I can speak on it now, and you can obviously speak on it. You're really only as good as the subject matter that you cover. So when the teams are winning and things like that it helps, right? I say that you can still do your job, but it helps. It makes it more fun.
Hell yeah, it does.
Makes
people
it way
are happier, man.
Exactly. People actually want to consume content and read your material, and heck, my material when there's hope and optimism, and we're seeing that right now with Shane Beamer. But the back-to-back national titles, man, really quickly. You talked about the relationship with Michael Roth, and I've had Michael. He's a friend of the show. Awesome dude. Scott Wingo, obviously back with Gamecock baseball, which is freaking awesome.
I actually didn't know that. That's great to hear.
Yes, he got hired last Thursday Thursday of last week.
Cool.
A++ hire for Mark Kingston, getting him back with Stuart Lake departing. Now you have Scott Wingo coming in, and I've been able to talk with so many of those guys and just Gamecock legends and that team. And it's so funny hearing the stories, man, because that 2010 and 11 team, I mean, back-to-back national champions, bunch of knuckleheads. I mean, some of the just like the most outlandish characters you have ever seen, but a bunch of guys that came together, clutch, so many clutch moments, from Whit Merrifield's walk-off, of course, to Jackie Bradley against Oklahoma, to Scott Wingo's defensive plays, to Robert Berry picking a ball that probably should have went off the mask. He had no business picking with a catcher's mitt, to Jake Williams making the most improbable throw of his freaking life. And I had Jake in studio and we laughed about that. But for you, again, your vantage point, being in Omaha, I mean, seeing a South Carolina team that defeated all the odds, that, again, it was one of those moments I'll never forget. Whit Merrifield lined the single to right, and I remember standing in my living room, and it was just silent. I was like, I was speechless. Again, it was one of those I can't believe it actually happened moments. Like, you just it was crazy. It was beyond words. So seeing that from your vantage point, seeing a team close out Rosenblatt and literally open up TD Ameritrade with championships, something that'll never be done again. I mean, what an experience! What an experience that was for you. I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
Well, I literally have chills just hearing you describe it, because it really is one of my favorite things to talk about and think about. And the two books are sitting right over here beside me. I think 2010 was just like the fact that it was just out of nowhere. You know, that to me, it was just kind of this beautiful story of a team that came together at just the right time and didn't even know what it had in itself. I mean, if you think about it, that Michael Roth had thrown like 18 innings or something all year and just would come in and get one or two guys out. And then you wind up discovering on the biggest stage in the sport that he's, oh, by the way, one of the best starting pitchers in the school's history and in the history of Omaha. Yeah. By the end of it, you know, I think had something like a 0.8 ERA by the end of it in 8 starts or 9 starts.
Yeah, most Omaha. Innings pitched ever in College World Series history.
Yeah, I mean, but to find that in a guy who fancied himself as a first baseman, who was moonlighting as a pitcher and believed that he was going to come out of his slump and be a power hitter, you know, that's incredible stuff. And to do it against your rival is just like unfathomable. I mean, just the whole confluence of all that. And if anybody's read the first book, you know, a lot of it's dedicated to the Teal family and the team and everyone rallying to think about him and play for him. And that was real. You know, I remember the Coastal Series when it was 1,000,000 degrees in Myrtle and Christian Walker's home run. And you're just like, I get to go to Omaha for the first time ever. Like, I was personally excited. Yeah. Never been, heard great things. Knew it was the last year of Rosenblatt. Just so excited to see the neighborhood and understand what that whole place is like. And I mean, it was 2 of the most fun weeks of my entire life, because you go and you think, we could be here for 4 days, or we could be here for the whole time. And we were there the whole time. And I'm glad that we were. So it was just, you know, our little media group, some of the USC like barking type folks, and trying to race out for last call after games. I think last call was at like 1 a.m., which, you know, you're working till 12 probably. And so they had an early last call. So you're like racing to celebrate and get a beer and just relax and have fun out there. And just, I mean, it seriously was, Chris. Like, I mean, it was the most fun, memorable time of my life, and I wasn't even playing. So to get to know those guys, I mean, I didn't know Michael Roth until that tournament started. To get to know Jackie and Christian and Wingo and, I mean, on and on, like all those guys, I still keep in touch with a pretty good amount of them. I think that was probably one of my biggest disappointments about COVID, was that we had kind of a reunion thing planned. I think it was going to be the start of this year, and it just couldn't do it. So that has to happen. You know, we've got to have a reunion with everybody and the fans. And I was obviously a really, 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 really small part of that, but to be a part of it at all and be able to tell the story was incredible. Like I said, the fact that it just came out of absolute nowhere, that you didn't think this team had a chance. They didn't even host the Super. They get out there, they're matched up with, like you said, Arizona State, Clemson's in that same side. And you're like, this team's not going anywhere. And then they moved into who they would become. You know, they became the favorites in 2011 because of that team and what they did in 2010. And I'll never forget it. I'm thankful for every person who was a part of that, Ray Tanner, Chad Holbrook on down.
Right. And Travis, it's great that you mentioned the team evolving into who they became, because it's funny, when fans reflect on 10 and 11, whether it be baseball, football, whatever, everybody just remembers the great times and, we just won every game and there was no adversity. And dude, you think about that 10 team. And again, I've been able to talk to tons of guys on those teams. You think about that 10 team though, lost 2 or 3 to East Carolina to start the season, lost 2 or 3 to Clemson and got beat like 19-4 at home on Sunday. This was not a team that was like, oh yeah, this is definitely. I had Chad Holbrook on the show. I'm like, did you know coming in the season this was going to be a College World Series team? He's like, no.
They were losing a lot of midweek games.
Yeah.
They were down. I mean, they almost lost the opening game to Bucknell before the rain delay, and they kind of got themselves together.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't know what was going to happen from game to game, and you got to Omaha, and I don't know. I still have a really hard time understanding what it was that happened to those guys. And obviously they were emotionally charged playing for a young boy and family in Bishopville. But I just, even now, I look back and I'm like, you got a couple of major leaguers, but so did everybody. I mean, everybody there was loaded, and it just wound up being a team that believed in itself. And the teams that I've been around in tournament play are the ones that go the deepest and have a chance. Those teams are the ones that like each other. And I think that was something that really resonated with me, was these guys, you could tell, really cared for one another. And they had opened up Ray Tanner from being a little bit less of a hard ass than he normally was. They just got him to relax a little bit more in the moment too. And a lot of that was Roth and Wingo and all those guys. And I like I said, I'm just eternally grateful for the fate putting me there, but also just for them being them, that it was just a really unique group of people, and they wound up winning a whole lot.
For sure. And Travis, on that note, we talked about the books that you've written, and Gamecock Glory, detailing the 2010 NCAA championship, Gamecock Encore, which was detailing the 2011 back-to-back, and then Classic Clashes of the Carolina-Clemson football rivalry, a state of disunion. Like I said, on the note, I want to talk about all the books you've written. And obviously, again, you're a storyteller, you're a creator. Like you mentioned, you were there and you're like, well, somebody's got to write a book. Somebody's going to document this in some way. It might as well be me. I'm curious to hear that, what was that process like? Again, what was the inspiration behind it? I mean, was it just something as simple as you're standing there like, boom, the idea hits you, let's write a book? And then you write the one in 2011. And then, of course, again, you write the one detailing the Carolina-Clemson rivalry, which, by the way, I wanted to mention, I've got all these books behind me. I don't have those books, so I need to get right.
We need to work on that.
I know. We need to get right. I need to get them myself. I've got Bobby Haney's book From Kings Park to Omaha, but I need to get the Travis Haney collection. But either way, man, just talk about those books really quickly. I know fans are probably really, really familiar with them, but what inspired that, the process. And I feel like that's probably something really cool, because as you're writing the books, you're sort of reliving all these great moments and overcoming adversities and just how special the run was. And of course, detailing one of the greatest rivalries in all of college sports.
Yeah. I remember the next day, a lot of us flew back from Kansas City, and we went to the Royals game that night, and we're all just kind of jet lagged from the whole 2 weeks, and we're in this weird kind of goofy headspace. And I went out and had a beer after the game with Kent Babb, who's a USC grad who works for the Washington Post. At that point in time, he was with the Kansas City Star. And I was just like, dude, what do you think? How do I go about, let's put our heads together about what do I do now to get this book off the ground? And I remember the next morning flying home on Delta, really, really terrible seat toward the back, and just sketching out on a Delta napkin my outline for the book, what I wanted it to be. And I probably was home a week or two, and then I went up and saw Jackie in Raleigh. He was playing with Team USA, and I caught up with him at a DoubleTree in Cary and sat down, and I just wanted to get to them as fast as I could and start having those conversations, even though I didn't have a publisher. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just knew if I spent time in those interviews that it was going to work out, that there was going to be some way to do it. And so I just went one by one and kind of caught everybody and talked to them and spent an hour or two with them and just cobbled together their memories, because I didn't cover a lot of that team's regular season just because they weren't very good. So I would do a Friday or a Sunday game or something here or there, but I wasn't immersed day to day until the tournament. So I had to piece together a lot of what had happened before. And there was a pivotal Florida series in there that kind of flipped the switch for everybody to change things. But that team wasn't going that team was like borderline going to make the tournament, let alone host a regional. Obviously didn't host a super. So yeah, I just went and kind of just, I don't know, man. It's just like anything else. You make it up as you go. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to do this. I wanted to write a book. And I think that's the source of pride now, 10 years later, is like, I hope people look on their shelves and they're like, they see that book and they're proud of what happened. And it is a history book in a way, but I wanted it to be alive with the stories of that team and not necessarily just this regurgitation of, I didn't want it to read like a textbook of what happened. Like I wanted it to be full of the energy and reflect what that team had itself, and agreed to do the football book on the heels of the baseball book, not knowing that they were going to win again. So I was actually working on the football book, and that was kind of its own process. I was at the Columbiana, I think that's right. The old library on the Horseshoe, like the archive library, going through like the State and the Post and Courier and the Greenville News from like the 20s and 30s and 40s, and trying to piece together. I did the 10 South Carolina memories. Larry Williams up in the upstate did the 10 Clemson memories, and then we just merged them together. But same deal. I didn't want it to be a textbook. I wanted people to like hear the stories from the people who were involved in these moments, almost like a magazine story. And we were interviewing people who played all the way back into the 40s. You know, we would find these people and go interview them. And so I thought that was a really cool, like I learned a lot about the rivalry because I heard from these people directly. So it was like, you know, the Todd Ellis, Tommy Suggs on back to Taney Hill. And then you keep going back. And I'm telling you, we're back to like Dom Fuski was the guy I remember we talked to, and he unfortunately passed away, I think, right before the book came out. But, you know, we tried to find everybody we possibly could to have these conversations. And so that was a fun project. But it wound up where I wrote 3 books in about a year and a half because nobody was expecting the second one. Right. And so all of a sudden you get back out there and they didn't lose the game somehow, despite their best efforts in a lot of places. And thanks to Matt Price and some of that defense that you talked about. But it was, I'm glad I did it. You know, I don't know if I'm rushing out to write another book right now, but I'm glad these 3 are sitting right here beside me, and found a publisher in Charleston, and certainly did not make much, if any, money off of it. Certainly for the time involved, I think my hourly rate would have been pretty criminal, but it was something that I was passionate about doing. Like I just wanted, and I think I'll be honest and say, I remember having a conversation with Ray, and I think he thought I was trying to maybe profiteer off the team or something. And as we talked, I think he came to understand, like, no, that's not really it, man. Like, I just feel like this is my vocation. I'm here in part to be able to tell these team stories. And I think once he understood that it was a genuine thing on my part, he was like, oh, okay. And kind of opened up to me a little bit more than he was thinking about doing on the front end.
Yeah, putting out positive energy and great work, man. I think that's awesome. And obviously, like you said, it's a book that people still have on their shelves. Like I said, I'm going to work on getting them on my shelves because
I've only got the second one, but I'll get you what I've got.
Yeah, this is an absolute must to have in the studio, obviously. But again, it's one of those things, man. Like I said, it's going to be something people have for generations to come, and living, you know, looking back on those teams and what they did. And hopefully, there will be some more national championships to come here soon.
Yeah, but, you know, need some fodder.
Yeah, in the meantime, though, having that to look back on and what those teams did, and you know, it was incredible. But I want to move off again. Your time into the South kind of beat around August 2011. You worked for places like the Oklahoman, ESPN, obviously, just some place called ESPN, whatever. You were a freelance reporter. You're with the Athletic as well, like you mentioned, covering the Titans. You live in Nashville. You also covered Charlotte football, I believe, and now you're out of the game. But I just love to hear again your media experience post South Carolina, because like you said, I feel like it was, you know, for better or for worse, and I feel like for better, though, you were attached to South Carolina a lot even after you left, and that's sort of where some of your most memorable work came from. But just going through the media journey, I guess now that you're out of it, when you look back, like what was that like? Because again, you had a very lengthy career after Columbia as well.
Well, I'll say the most recent thing I was doing was I wasn't writing, but I was working for the UNC Charlotte football team. So
Gotcha.
I think that having that perspective for 2 years working on the inside of a football program and coming to understand all the things that it takes to run a team and a building and a program at that level, at the Conference USA level, let alone at the SEC level, I came away with a very different perspective on it's a lot, and I think, Shane is probably facing some of those questions about how fast can you learn, even though I know you've been around Lincoln Riley and your dad and Spurrier and all these really successful people, but this is your deal now. And are you prepared for all that entails? And I think he'd be honest and say in some ways yes, and in some ways no. And it's like anything, I'll learn what I need to know as fast as I can, but there is going to be some learning. And so I think that is the thing that stands out to me. Is my most recent experience was outside of writing, and it really wasn't much media stuff at all. I was an assistant to the head coach and just kind of a catch-all. So I was doing academic stuff and helping with our social media stuff, content. And that was really different. And working for ESPN, I remember I was there in studio to do TV at ESPNU the day that Spurrier retired. And so that was a really interesting day because they put me on like probably 6 or 7 different shows because of the perspective that I had. I remember Kevin Carter was there and he played for Spurrier at Florida. So he and I were on a lot of different shows like SportsCenter and everything, Feinbaum all day that day. The whole thing, working in sports is really hard. And a lot of people do it for a really long time. I did it for 20-ish years. And
it's a long stint. That's a long.
There's a lot of sacrifice. It's gotten a lot harder, obviously, just in terms of stability. And that was the eye-opening thing about ESPN when I was let go in 2016. It's like, hey, if ESPN is in a place where there's stability, there's not going to be any in sports media, period. And so I think that's just an unfortunate reality. Is a lot of friends of mine have been laid off. I've obviously been laid off and trying to struggle to make it work when we just gushed and I got chills talking about the South Carolina, the baseball teams in 2010, 2011. You're working for those moments, but it's harder and harder and harder to work for those moments when you're sacrificing finance and stability and all those things. And that's ultimately what led me to try and go down a different path. And now I'm in sales. But the thing that I look back on is I'm really glad I did it. I don't have any regret because of the memories, because of the moments, because of the friendships. I'm so glad that I did it. I feel really fortunate that I got to do all the things that I did. And a lot of that is my time in South Carolina because like I said, I didn't know when I got there in 2007, 2008, it didn't look like any of this stuff was going to work out. Those were the baseball teams that were supposed to be in Omaha with Smoke and those guys, and they didn't make it. They couldn't even make it out of a regional a couple of times. And then the team that you don't expect winds up winning the whole thing. And it's post-hype Spurrier. Everybody's kind of given up on him. And then 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13 happened. And I just feel really fortunate that I was there at that point in time. And there's no question about that.
Now, Travis, before we get into the Shane Beamer stuff, because obviously you mentioned, your relationship with Shane, and of course he's the man of the hour. We're just sitting now less than a month from kickoff, and I definitely want to get your thoughts on that. Before we do, though, again, you talk media, and like you said, you had a 20-year career, and so you've seen the way media has really shifted and how it's changed, and I love getting perspective from people who have really lived through that and seen that, and obviously you did, even going back to your days of first starting out covering South Carolina, where it's really just print media and the internet's really kind of starting to get going. But we didn't have social media. We didn't have Twitter, Facebook, and we had MySpace, but we didn't have like the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Instagram and all that. And it completely changed. You talked about, yourself, creating a, your own personal brand in the Columbia community and connecting with people. And it's a tool for that. And there's pros and there's cons of social media and things on Twitter. And we see that on a daily basis. But like you mentioned, it certainly changed the grind of working in sports in the sense of, dude, you got to be on 24/7 because stuff is just constantly happening like that. I talked to Phil Kornblue about this. I talked to Rick Henry about this and others who have been in this game in this area for a long time. But I guess from your vantage point, again, seeing the evolution of sports media going from, print media to the website started coming around to digital media to social media and like the way it's changed things. How crazy, I guess, has that been for you, just seeing that overall evolution? And how did it change the way you approached your everyday job and what you were doing?
Well, by the time I got to ESPN, social media was just part of the job. And it also changed the way when I graduated from college in 2003, at that point in time, like you said, you could just be a reporter. And then I figured out, dang, I'm going to need to know how to do radio and TV. And, you had to learn how to do everything. So it's really just adapting, I think, is the bottom line. And some people are willing and able to adapt to whatever. Where we are now is not where we'll be in 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? Like what we're doing right now, Zoom wasn't a thing, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just the people who are willing to like, okay, this is where it's at now. It's exhausting, I think having to, like you said, be on all the time and just be vigilant to if there's breaking news or if you wake up one day in Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC. I mean, you just never know. So it just creates this 24/7. It's just part of the rhythm of your life. And I won't lie, man, like I don't miss that. I don't have to look at Twitter like I did. And I'm able to like unfollow some, team accounts that I just followed for sport before. And I just think it can burn you out. And I don't think that's just media. I think fans and whatever else. I mean, you can burn out on content just consuming. And when you're the one who's forced to help create it, I think that it definitely boosts the burnout rate for sure. So it happened pretty gradually. I can't hate it because it did help me elevate myself and separate myself in Columbia. And, I tried to be okay at it when I was at ESPN and not be too antagonistic and understand that fans are going to be fans and they're going to get after you. And that's part of it. But it does, hearing that you suck every day, it'll wear you out. And I mean, it's just not that fun. And so I won't miss that. I won't miss the combativeness of it, but I can also separate and appreciate that I have made friendships as a result of it. And the jokes are usually pretty good. So you and I had a funny exchange last night about random Gamecocks, and, so it can be fun. It can be light, but it's whatever you make it, and you can get too immersed in it and it weighs you down. And so I'm glad to be free of that.
Yeah, Travis, that's great perspective. Yeah, definitely from somebody in my seat that sees it as well, and the combativeness, and especially the last couple of years of Gamecocks football. You're right. I mean, it's there's a lot of pros to it, but certainly like anything else, there are cons as well. But you
take the coaching search, right? And I don't know whether it's going to work out for Shane or not, but just like watching everyone just yell over the top of each other about what should happen or shouldn't happen, and to the point where it's like personal and contentious, in some respects. And you're just like, nobody knows. Like nobody, I mean, an AD makes a hire and he thinks Will Muschamp's going to work out. He thinks Shane's going to work out. Pro teams make hires, whatever. Like nobody knows if a hire is going to work out. You do your math and you hope and you set yourself up for success and you give them resources. But like, I don't like the vitriol, and I don't like that we take it to that level. And I understand that some people are going to do that, but I hate that. I hate that that's as prevalent as it is right now, that quote unquote discourse, whether it's college football or whatever's happened in the last year and a half with COVID. Like I get burned. I am personally burned out on people yelling at each other about everything. Yeah. And so being able to step away from social media at this point in time, I think has been pretty healthy for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree. That's great perspective. Well, let's get into Shane Beamer, obviously, Travis, because again, this is great times for Gamecocks football right now. Like I said, as we sit just 27 days away from kickoff, the positive energy, the momentum that Shane Beamer has created this preseason and all leading up to that September 4th kickoff against Eastern Illinois. But obviously, you had a relationship with him beforehand that you talked about, and you've seen him at different stops. And obviously, when you were covering the Gamecocks, Steve Spurrier had hired a young assistant named Shane Beamer to help come change special teams and recruiting. And we obviously saw what he did during his time there. Some of the best Gamecocks to ever wear the uniform came through Columbia. And obviously he bounced around himself from Georgia, Oklahoma. He's with his dad at Virginia Tech. Just talk about any of those previous relationships or previous stops, I guess, where you had interactions with Shane Beamer, what you remember about him then. And then when you heard he got the job or saw he got the job, I guess, how excited were you? And just your overall thoughts on Gamecocks football with him leading the charge.
Yeah. So just the context is I was a student at Tennessee when he was a grad assistant for Fulmer at Tennessee. And we've talked about it. Like we were probably around each other, but I really didn't get to know him that well, but in '07, it was my first year on the beat. I don't remember when he had come in from Mississippi State at that point, but he was somebody that I connected to because of that experience at Tennessee. And then he and we got pretty close, and we went on a couple of like little area golf trips together, and got to know his family, and, you know, was around when his kids were born and growing up. And now it's crazy to see how old, not relatively old, you know, how grown up they are, I'll say. But here's what I'll say about Shane is, and I don't profess to know how this is going to go because it's the SEC and it's really hard and it doesn't work out for most people. But I think what Gamecock fans can hang their hats on is that this is a genuinely good person. And this is someone who has been at SEC stops in Virginia Tech and Oklahoma and has not lost his way about who he is. And to your question about how I felt when he got the job, I made a point in the first month or so. I went down, I texted him and I went down and I just got in front of him and I just said, "This is really cool, man. Like, it's cool to see you in this chair. It's cool to see you in this position because you deserve it." And he was somebody who wanted to be a head coach for a long time. Obviously had, following the success of his dad, he wanted to be in that seat. And I think he wanted to know what it was like to run a program with a lot of the same ethical backbone that his dad had, you know, and run it in an ethically sound way and run it his way and run it genuinely, authentically, and personally. So, you know, he was ready, you know, it was probably overdue for him. You know, I think there were some group of five type opportunities over the years. I remember him talking with him about FAU, I think at one point in time when they hired someone else. I know he had, I think Charlie Partridge was the guy who got hired at that point in time, but he had put in and, you know, waited his turn. And this exact opportunity at this time was sort of made for him because I think people wanted to feel connection to that successful period in 09, 10, 11, 12. And I think he understood that. You know, Shane understood how to meet them in that place and say, yeah, I mean, we're not going to be able to get it exactly like it was then, but because of the facilities, because of the advances that we've made around here, we got a chance to compete and be successful. And I think the best news, again, is you can feel has nothing to do with Will Muschamp or anybody before, but I know Shane as well as I know any coach in America, and who he is who he is. And I think that isn't always the case with coaches, and especially in the SEC. I think you get people and it's big business and they kind of lose their way. That's not Shane. And I'm counting on it never being Shane. And I'll call his ass out on it if it ever is. And he'll have friends who will do the same thing. But this is a really good human being, and you can feel good about the direction of the program just based on that alone.
And I'll say this, Travis, just to kind of use something you spoke on earlier about, you know, head coaches sort of evolving and getting in that chair and everything that comes with running a program. And you talked about your stint with the Gamecocks and how you grew with the program and you saw the whole Spurrier era. And not to make it personal, but I kind of look at myself as far as, you know, this TSUS thing, it got started pretty recently. I mean, 2017 is not that long ago, really. And I mean, I didn't even move to Columbia till August of 2019. So, but I think what's cool is like, and I want Gamecock fans to have this perspective, if you will, is like, and I agree with you that, you know, Shane Beamer being a part of those teams that were the greatest teams in school history. And obviously he embraces Columbia and embraces the culture and embraces this fan base. And I think, you know, for better or for worse, whatever, at the pro game, it doesn't matter. It's a business. You go out there, you do your job. If you don't, you get fired. At the college game, it's so much different, though. And I think Carolina fans, they do want a guy they can wrap their arms around and really embrace, and he embraces them. And it's this big, happy family. Again, culture in college. I mean, culture was the word. It was pounded in people's head during the coaching surge. Culture, culture, culture. Every player I brought on, that's all they talked about. And obviously Shane is the guy to bring that back. But I think it's cool for myself personally where I'm at, but also this fan base too. And I would say to the fan base, let's grow with Shane Beamer, because like anything else, like you were saying about your book, like you just kind of make it up as you go along. I fully expect Shane Beamer in year 5. And again, I don't know how many games he's going to win. I don't know if he's going to win an SEC. I don't know if he's going to go to God forbid, win a national title. I mean, I hope so. But I think in year 5, just like anything else in life, Shane Beamer is going to look back and say, man, I'm so much better of a coach now than I was. And he's probably going to look back and say, hey, I would never do that again. Or I never, say that or whatever it might be. But I think that being able to grow with this guy and sort of, like I said, wrap your arms around and embrace him and just, there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be adversity just like anything else in life. But Gamecock fans, just buckle up and embrace the dude. And let's kind of ride this thing out and just see what happens, man. I mean, it's his first stop. Let's let him grow and evolve and let the program grow and evolve. And I don't know, just kind of a random rant. But it's cool for me sitting in my chair. Like I said, you see we've got the Beamer stuff on, but being able to sort of grow and go on this journey with Shane Beamer, I think is something that Gamecock fans, I would say, I know we get all lost in the predictions and the record, and certainly I do that. But I think it's a really cool time right now to be a Gamecock fan, I guess is the point that I'm making.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the history of the coaches, there's really not one that resembles this profile of a coach, right? I mean, even Will had been around the SEC for a long time and then at Florida. But Spurrier and Lou being the most predominant of our lifetimes, basically,
right,
of knowledge of Gamecock football, it was guys who were established, kind of retread, second career type people. Here's someone who we don't know. I mean, there's no track record. You can look at his dad, you can look at Lincoln Riley or Kirby Smart or whatever, as successful people he's been around, but we don't know what his story is as a head coach. And I think that's a great way to look at it, as there's going to be bumps that come along with that, but this is somebody we can believe in on a personal level. He cares about it. I think I wasn't around for Will, but I think that Spurrier, it really, and Jerry and the family really embraced Columbia and embraced the school, and still, even though it ended the way that it did and people are grumpy about that, like it's still, there's a connection there. And when he's back around like he was in the past week, there's a affinity that he had for South Carolina that wasn't just this transactional, this is where I'm working right now. Like, he cared about it. And I think Shane's going to bring a lot of that, and that in that community, that is meaningful. And I'll say the thing that's probably difficult for Gamecock fans to say is, when you've got what's going on up the road in the upstate, and that's kind of looming over you the way that it does, you need somebody who can love on you and build you up. And you almost have to kind of separate yourself from that even happening in your backyard and just hope that it doesn't continue for that much longer, even though it looks like there's no signs of slowing down. But, I think that you're definitely tracking with a very healthy viewpoint of the SEC is really damn hard to win in. And the East it's the same. It's always going to be some combination of Florida and Georgia, depending on the year. And then everybody else is trying to fight through and break through. So I think healthy expectations and reasonable bars being set are very important for programs like South Carolina and even Tennessee. Kentucky has kind of reached up to that point, that you've just got to hang in there and hope that you can get a run of players like they did 10 years ago that can give you a chance to compete and win the East and have a chance to win the league. And I think, based on what I know, I think Shane has the pedigree and the DNA to be able to do that.
For sure. Travis, it's been a pleasure, man. I'm going to get you out of here. A couple of quick hitters, though, before I let you go. Obviously, you had a ton of great memories with Steve Spurrier and coaches during your time. Do you have like the most vivid memory for you covering a particular player? Because I feel like, as great as the coaches were while you were at South Carolina, I mean, that was some of the greatest cast of characters we've ever seen wear the uniform. And I mean, again, I know you talk to Garcia and Roth and guys that are just unapologetically themselves. They just are. Like, you saw the evolution of Ray Tanner, because there's just no way he'd ever let a guy like Michael Roth in his dugout in 2002. I mean, it's just no way. Those dudes were clowns. I mean, they just were. I mean, the guys that played on those teams, like, yeah, we were a bunch of goons, man. We just made it work. But was there any vivid moment for you that stands out, like covering the guy? Maybe it's not a well-known player, but I feel like you came in contact with so many legendary Gamecocks. I mean, is there one that stands out for you?
I think I had enough run-ins with Steven that he probably would be my answer. I just don't know which ones I can say, not because I'm afraid to say it, but I just don't want to offend or embarrass him. But like we had some pretty funny interactions at Village Idiot over the years when we were there. I remember for some reason he wore his like protective flak jacket into the bar.
Oh my God.
On a game week. And I'm not really sure why he was doing that, but I remember at one point he was doing snow angels on the ground in the flak jacket. I love the dude. Like, I mean, he obviously was a personality and a character, and it was his undoing in the end as a quarterback at South Carolina. But I do appreciate the way that people around there still embrace him. And I mean, I've never covered an athlete like him. And like I said, I got to know him pretty well. They invited me to his graduation, which I just wanted to see for myself that he actually graduated. So I caught up with him and his family after that. And I think I still kept the little postcard invitation just as a documentation that he did in fact graduate.
Did it actually happen?
I hope he's watching this, and I hope I could have told worse stories, Steven, and you know that. So I didn't, but he was my dude, and we still talk, and we've kicked around trying to. I was like, we should write a book. Just tell your whole story, tell all the anecdotes, man. People will read it. So he's always kicked that around, but we haven't made it happen yet.
Dude, that might be like the New York Times bestseller type of book.
You can get after him too. Get after him too, and tell him we need to do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'd love to. No, that's incredible. You know what's funny? My next question was going to be, because I know you're a big Village guy, like favorite memory from I think that probably would be the one though. That's an incredible that's an incredible story.
At least the ones that I would say on air.
Yeah. Right. For sure.
So I was 25 when I got the beat job, so not very far out of college. So if I went to Village now, I would feel like some really creepy person, but at 25, I think it was pretty acceptable. And Brian and Kelly are really good friends, and I met them through Tim Hill and Matt Berry when he was in Columbia at the same time as us, and we all got to know each other and create a really strong friend group, and a lot of really good memories. Like, I mean, I joke. I mean, it always wasn't inappropriate, but it was a hell of a lot of fun. And the dudes who had their jerseys up on the wall, like Sorensen and Eric Norwood and those guys, and I was always like, can we put like my reporter notebook in a frame or something, because I just wanted to be a part of that wall. Really good pizza, really good times, really good friends, and that was a huge piece of my time in Columbia for sure.
Yeah, and Brian and Kelly are awesome. And hey, Village Idiot, man, I'm right here in Cola. It's still rocking and rolling, as glorious as ever. So with those jerseys still on the wall, by the way.
I wonder, have they done an NIL sponsorship yet? I need to ask Brian.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I mean, I'm sure I'd have to think Brian's behind closed doors, like cooking something up, no pun intended. Travis, again, this has been a pleasure. Last thing, really quick before I let you go, you're a college football guy. You got to pick for a national champion this year.
I mean,
put you on the spot, man. Why not? I mean,
I'll say this. I don't know, other than, I mean, be a lazy, like, Alabama or Clemson. No, I'm really curious to see what Georgia is this year. I think that's
my pick. That's my pick.
Well, and if they don't win, then it's kind of, when are you going to win? Everything's pretty lined up for them. They maybe, I think, have a quarterback, and it seems like they're pretty loaded from the last couple of years. This is kind of a do it or else year for them, and I'm really watching them curiously, and I'll obviously be watching those guys at UNC Charlotte. They open with Duke. To see what kind of season they have, to see. I mean, we had 9 games. We didn't get into this, Chris, but we had 9 games canceled or moved. And we had as many games disrupted last year as anybody, which was part of the reason I burned out and got out of it. But want them to have a great, healthy season. I'm going to watch every one of their games, go to as many as I can. Great people on staff. The players are amazing. So it's not a national championship pick, but those are the teams I'm going to be watching pretty closely.
For sure. Travis Haney, again, I appreciate you taking the time, man. He's a creator. He's a storyteller. He's a publisher, or not really a publisher, but published books, if you will. And I know I can speak for all Gamecock Nation, Travis, when I say it was awesome following your work and all the value you put out and all the content that you created and the way you covered the Gamecocks, and obviously all the great work you've done since. And, congratulations on starting your new journey, and wish you the best, and might save you some headaches on that old Twitter machine. So, but no, seriously, man, I appreciate you taking the time. Yeah. This was incredible, reliving some of the greatest memories and obviously the great work you did. So thank you so much.
Fun for me too. Thanks, Chris.
Absolutely. He's Travis Haney. I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on an episode of the Spurs Up Show.